Okay, well, good morning. I'm Vice Admiral John Miller. I'm the commander of the U.S. Fifth Fleet and U.S. Naval Forces Central Command and the Combined Maritime Force. I'm joined this morning by Commodore Keith Blount, who's the U.K. Maritime Component Commander and the Deputy Commander of the Combined Maritime Force and the Commander of the International Mine Countermeasure Exercise. So I welcome all of you to the Kingdom of Bahrain and the International Mine Countermeasure Exercise. I'll open up this morning with a brief statement, and then we'll entertain any questions that you might have. This morning, more than 40 nations from 6 continents have joined us here in Bahrain and throughout the region to take part in this year's International Mine Countermeasure Exercise, or IMCMEX, the largest exercise of its kind anywhere in the world. These nations are united by a common thread. They recognize the threat to global commerce posed by mines. Throughout the course of this exercise, participants will train to execute a wide spectrum of defensive operations designed to protect international commerce and trade, consisting of mine countermeasures, maritime security operations, and maritime infrastructure protection. We started this event last week with a 3-day symposium on maritime infrastructure protection, bringing together governments, militaries, and industry to discuss how we can best provide the necessary foundation of security that supports unrestricted access to the vital maritime infrastructure that is critical to the regional and global economies. This was our 6th MIPS conference, the second time we paired it with the IMCM exercise, and I think the best attended and most productive symposium that we've had to date. Today we move to our at-sea phase of the exercise, where participating nations will operate 38 ships, 19 unmanned underwater vehicles, and will have nearly 100 explosive ordnance disposal divers working together in the international waters of the Middle East, from the northern Arabian Gulf to the Arabian Sea to the northern Red Sea. This year's IMCMEX is significantly more complex than previous editions of the exercise, with more ships, more nations, and more sailors operating as an international force to protect our sea lanes. Accompanying this world-class capacity are the most advanced capabilities and comprehensive procedures in conducting MCM operations at the fastest rate and highest accuracy to date. Part of this comprehensive approach is the inclusion of marine mammal systems, with their ability to operate in highly cluttered environments and deep depths in support of discovery, marking, and recovery of persons or objects of interest. We'll also introduce the airborne laser mine detection system and unmanned mine hunting unit, new technologies designed to add speed and accuracy to our mine hunting efforts. More importantly, this exercise is about enhancing our cooperation, mutual maritime capabilities, and interoperability between international partners while developing the international community's ability to address threats to the freedom of navigation and international commerce wherever in the world they might occur. This region provides a strong training opportunity for nations worldwide, as 3 of the 6 major maritime choke points in the world are here: the Suez Canal, the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, and the Strait of Hormuz. Nearly 20% of the world's oil transits through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. Imagine the effect on the global economy if suddenly that oil stops flowing because of restricted sea lanes. This region is important to the entire world. Our partnership with commercial shipping is another unique strength of this exercise. We continue to effectively operate together with partner nations, further highlighting the ability to safely escort ships throughout the waters of the Arabian Peninsula, protecting the free flow of commerce. In addition to all the multinational forces participating at sea and in the ports throughout the region, there's also a very robust staff which is made up of service members from over 25 countries. This staff, the International Maritime Exercise Force, oversees all the complex operations of the exercise and is led by my Deputy Commander, Commodore Keith Blount. The makeup of this international staff amplifies that this exercise is a collaborative effort of more than 40 nations that have come together for mine countermeasure, maritime security operations, and maritime infrastructure protection. With the cooperation on display here for IMCMEX, just imagine how effective the global response will be if there ever was an actual threat of mine warfare anywhere in the world. The tremendous number of nations participating in this exercise sends a clear signal that threats to global commerce will not be tolerated, and that these 40-plus nations are united in their commitment to ensure that the free use of the global commons for the benefit of the whole world economy will never be at risk. Thank you for your time. Commodore Blount and I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, ma'am.
This is the third year that you do this exercise. You mentioned that it's bigger and there's much more nations participating. How relevant right now is such an exercise when the real threat that we're seeing is really not, nobody's talking about mines or threats on commercial shipping. The real threat is what you know, the U.S. Navy forces actually leading an actual war against ISIS. So how relevant is this exercise when your naval forces are participating in actual war? And my second part of the question is, could you tell us a little bit more about the Arab countries' participation in this exercise and in what capacity are they participating?
Well, I think it's always relevant, and what we've seen, if you look just over the last decade, there have been a number of attacks on maritime shipping, and so as part of the exercise, what we will do is, as I mentioned, we just had a symposium on infrastructure protection, which includes, of course, shipping, and that will continue to be part of this exercise as well. And you always have to be mindful of that, and we do track threat streams that there are certainly desires to attack both infrastructure and shipping, and so we're aware of that. So it's important that we practice that. And there's always a threat of mining. We saw in the late 80s during the tanker wars, there was quite a bit of mining in this part of the world. And this is not something that you can practice for when it happens. You have to be prepared for it. And so it's something that we do practice on a routine basis, and I think an exercise of this magnitude is important that we practice from time to time to bring many nations together because it's very complex. And you can't wait until you actually have mines in the water to put something of this magnitude together to see if you can do it. And so I think it's very relevant. And each time we've conducted this exercise, we've learned a great deal from it, and we stand to learn a great deal from this particular exercise. I think we've learned a great deal already. I don't know if you want to comment on that as well, Keith.
I think we shouldn't focus just on the mine countermeasures element of this exercise. It's far broader than that. So the skills that we're practicing here are broader maritime security operation skills, including maritime infrastructure protection, which I think is entirely relevant to any maritime backdrop, which is so determined by by trade and the free flow of trade. So it's definitely relevant, and it also represents the way in which modern navies are expert or try and be expert across a very broad array of tasks, which include at their higher end, of course, warfighting, but also broader maritime security work, such as that which is being exercised here.
And to your second question about participation, I'm a big believer in letting individual nations talk about what they're doing, but I think it's fair to say that we've got great participation from the nations in the region here. Yes, sir.
Hendrik Samoy, Stars and Stripes. Admiral, since these exercises do seem like they're getting bigger each year with more nations participating, do you feel like that the waterways in this region are becoming more dangerous? Are there more threats to commercial shipping now?
I think the participation really is driven by the fact that the exercise has proven relevance, and it's proven to be a good training opportunity. So we began planning for this exercise right after the last exercise. This is the third time we've conducted an international mine countermeasure exercise. It's grown each time, but it's grown each time because I think nations see it as an excellent training opportunity.
But in the region, do you think that the region's becoming more dangerous? Are there more? Do you view that there are more threats now?
I think what people see is that the maritime environment is very stable. It's very secure. It is secured now, I think, as it was the last time we conducted the exercise. And what I think we have seen is growing cooperation in the maritime environment in the region, and because of that, we have better participation. Yes, sir.
Sean Furey from NHK Japan. Commander, how do you assess the threat of IS in this part of the world, especially the Gulf?
In terms of a maritime threat?
Yeah.
I think they have aspirations everywhere. And I think it's important for us to continue to work in a cooperative fashion to make sure that we keep the maritime environment secure.
Aspirations to disrupt something?
Oh, I think that ISIS has aspirations to be disruptive wherever they can possibly be disruptive, and that includes the maritime environment. And so our job is to make sure that we keep the maritime environment secure from any threat, and that certainly includes ISIS. Yes.
Hi, I'm Faith, the Associated Press. There was recently a counter-piracy conference in the UAE where the foreign minister kind of spoke about the fear that piracy, including Al-Shabaab, will work with groups like ISIS and create more of a threat in the maritime world. What do you have to say about that?
Well, we have not seen a successful pirate attack since May of 2012, but we have seen unsuccessful pirate attacks. So we know that there still is aspirations for piracy in the region, and in particular in the Somali Basin off the Horn of Africa. So we need to continue our counter-piracy efforts, which are quite robust. And it's an international effort that is very impressive and has proven quite fruitful. So I think it's safe to say that we'll continue our counter-piracy efforts. We run a counter-piracy task force from this headquarters. Commodore Blount is in charge of that, Task Force 151, currently under the command of New Zealand, and quite effective. The European Union and NATO both run task forces as well, and there's a number of independent nations that contribute to the counter-piracy effort. So I think all of that will continue. What we have not seen, and we continue to look for, is a tie between piracy and terrorism. So we don't see a tie between Al-Shabaab and the Somali pirates. We don't see a tie between ISIS and piracy yet, but we continue to watch for that, and we'll continue to keep an eye out for that. You want to add to that, Keith?
I think you said it all, really. We certainly don't know of any link between ISIS and Al-Shabaab, but ISIS are they're a bad crowd. And if they can bring others in, I'm sure that they would look to do that. But we certainly don't see anything. We haven't adjusted our posture because of that.
Yes, sir.
I'm Jacob Khalid. A couple of years ago, you were speaking of the Iranian threat, but are you working close with the Iranians to face a maritime threat against the ISIS, the same way you're doing in Syria?
We have a very robust maritime security operation that we run from here. And I'll just leave it at that. We conduct maritime security operations as one of our major lines of operation out of this headquarters.
All right, we got time for one more question. If anybody has anything else?
Yes, sir.
This is kind of a general question, but could you describe the difference between the minesweeping operation during the wartime and after, whether a ceasefire is in place?
Well, what we understand is that in order to conduct mine countermeasure operations, that we need to have a certain degree of maritime superiority and air superiority in the space that we're actually conducting maritime countermeasure operations, and we account for that in our operations.
With just curious, because Commissioner Ron, I'm just curious about a little bit about the timing of the exercise with the negotiations right now going on with Iran, and I know Iran has always thrown out criticism at these types of exercises. Are you worried about having so many ships, so many countries doing an exercise? What kind of message that may be sending to the Iranians?
This exercise is about mines. That's why we call it the International Mine Countermeasure Exercise. We picked the timing of this exercise right after the completion of our last exercise, and it was time to fit in with other exercises that are conducted internationally so that we could maximize the participation. So long before any other negotiations were planned, this exercise date was planned.
Can I just do a quick one? Could you just tell us, you mentioned very briefly, could you give us a little more details about what's new this year? You mentioned some of the laser and stuff. What's new?
A couple things that are new. We've introduced some new technologies that have come along the way. The airborne laser mine detection system is a new technology that is being flown on a MH-60 helicopter. We've also introduced the mine hunting unit, which is an unmanned surface vessel that tows a sonar behind it. That's a new technology. So we're bringing some of these technologies into the exercise so that we can understand how they fit into the overall mine countermeasure effort. But what's, I think, most important about the exercise is that it is increased in overall complexity. So we have more nations, we have more ships, we have more unmanned vessels, and so the complexity of the exercise in its totality has increased. And so I think that's the most important part. Keith, I think you might want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think even though the number of nations has only gone up by 4, which doesn't seem a great number, last year around about a dozen of the 40 nations that took part actually showed up with ships or diving teams or stuff, basically, to help the exercise run. This year it's almost 30 have actually brought something to the exercise other than just delegates or staff members. So as a result, you know, you can already see that there's a lot more stuff out on the water than there was last year. As a result of that, we've actually had to spread the geographic area over which the exercise takes place. So last year it was just simply in and around the Gulf. This year it's through the Gulf of Oman, into the Gulf of Aden and up through the Red Sea. So the actual geography of the exercise has increased as well to accommodate the number of new players that we've got this year.
Do you have a total number of how many ships total?
38.
Yes, sir.
My name is Motoya Araki from TBS. Let me ask a very specific question related with the Japanese defense forces, which is joining this exercise. And now there's an argument in Japan that the government has changed its policy for the interpretation of the Japanese constitution, which are the self-defense forces use the right of collective self-defense. So now Japanese cabinet put the mine sweeping in urban Gulf by the Japanese self-defense forces as the example of the using the collective self-defense. So my question is, do you have any expectation for the Japanese self-defense forces on this exercise? And one more question is, if the Japanese government change its security policy, what kind do you expect to the Japanese self-defense forces, much more than before, as a member of the community of the mines countermeasure group?
Well, we welcome the contribution of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force. This is not their first time participating in the International Mine Countermeasure exercise. They participated in the last exercise we had. They participated in a similar fashion in the first exercise with 2 ships and a staff. So their participation this time is similar to their participation in the first mine countermeasure exercise. So they bring a very, very credible mine countermeasure force to the exercise. They bring a lot of experience. As you might recall, they were participants in the late 80s when there were actually mines in the water in the Gulf here, and so we welcome that participation and that experience.
All right, folks, well, thanks very much for coming today. Admiral, any closing remarks?
Well, again, I want to thank you all for coming. I know you're going to get an opportunity to get out and see some of the sailors and some of the hardware, and you'll have a chance here over the next several days to see some of the activities and see our sailors actually in action. It is a very important exercise to us. I think all of us understand that what you'll see in action is the same kind of activity that would happen if there were mines anywhere in the world. And certainly, there can be mines anywhere in the world because, there are mines that are arrayed in various different countries all around the world. And if they end up anywhere in the water, they're going to have an effect on the global economy. And it's important that the skill sets that will be practiced over the next several days here are skill sets that will be important if, if they need to be employed anywhere in the world. And so I think it's a great opportunity for you to see those get put into action. It's important for all of us that are participants in the exercise to understand how to work together so that we can quickly get mines out of the water, because if they're in the water, they're going to have an impact, and everyone's going to be equally concerned in understanding how quickly we can get them out of the water. So thanks for participating. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.